Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I am super excited for today. I am interviewing Dr. Mark Van Dyke, who's not only in the Department of Biomedical Engineering, but also the Associate Dean of Research for the College of Engineering. Dr. Van Dyke, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good to be here.
Yes, totally. So I know you're super new to the U of A relatively. You joined last September, is that right?
Last August.
August. Oh, so, a little bit longer than that. How are you liking it so far?
Love it. Love Tucson. Love the U of A.
Because you're new to Tucson as well, right?
Yeah, new to Arizona. We moved from Virginia.
Okay, well, moving in August, you probably got a good taste of the heat.
We did. We took the northern route and came down from Flagstaff, where it was in the 70s, and hit Phoenix at 114 degrees. I still remember that.
You probably went through Flagstaff and were thinking, oh, this isn't too bad. And then Tucson.
Yeah, we had lunch in Flagstaff outdoors, and I thought, wow, this is awesome. Arizona's great. And then saw the temperature just keep going up as we drove down the mountains and into Phoenix. But it's okay. We lived in Texas for a while too, and that was plenty hot. And so we kind of knew what we were getting ourselves into. And it is true what they say about a dry heat. I'm not a humidity guy at all. I hate the humidity now even more than I did before. And so even the heat isn't too bad.
Yeah. And did you get any of the monsoons when you were here? Maybe the tail end?
The first year was really dry. So this
Okay.
past summer was the first time we sort of understood what people were talking about when they're talking about monsoon, because the first year, it rained a little bit and we thought, well, is this monsoon? We don't know. But this past summer was a lot of rain. So
I
we know
loved it.
exactly
Yeah.
what people are talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah. Tucson doesn't rain a lot, but when it does, it does.
Yeah, it was. So really, this was our first full summer, and it was really only hot in June. And July and August, there was so much rain that it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I've got a few questions. So we were really curious about how you came to biomedical engineering. I was looking a bit at your history, extensive, and then you only started BME back in 2012. Is that right?
Formally, I mean, I've been around biomedical engineering, and my formal training is materials.
Right.
My PhD is material science. And I've been around biomaterials medical device area for probably 25 years. And that includes going all the way back into industry. I've been in academia now for about 20 years.
Okay. Yeah, we thought that you were a really special person to talk to, not only because of your position, but because you have so much experience, not just in academia, but also industry, and then also a couple companies. Is that right?
Yeah, I've done a few startup companies too.
That's great. Your
Strange
research,
background.
it's impressive. It was a lot to look into.
Well, that just means I'm old.
And then I was also trying to understand your area of like research and expertise, and just going through the papers. There were so many, but it seems like keratin is the latest focus.
Yeah, so I've been a biomaterials person my whole career, and the last 21 years now focused on keratin-based biomaterial systems. So I went from being more of a synthetic polymer chemistry sort of person to now, I guess, a protein biochemist. Although I don't claim a formal background in biochemistry, but I work mostly with extracellular matrix kinds of proteins and largely keratin. Yep.
Okay. And do you have any graduate students working on projects for you right now, or?
Not that I directly supervise because of my position in the dean's office. I haven't built up a large research group like I've had in the past. I have a couple of funded projects right now, and so I work those projects largely through collaborators, and they have graduate students, undergrads. So I still keep my finger on that pulse, but I don't run a big group here at the U of A myself directly.
Right, yeah. And then those collaborators, are these people in BME at the U of A, or is it also other schools as well?
I've got two funded projects right now, and one involves Dr. Min-Kyu Kim
Mhm.
in BME, who also has an appointment at MSE. And so his group's doing most of the laboratory work. And then we've got another project that Dr. Kim is also involved in, but it also involves folks from chemical and environmental engineering, optical sciences, and some collaborators at Cornell.
Wow, that's awesome. I took a Dr. Kim's biomaterials class actually, so that's my main experience with biomaterials.
Yeah, he's great, and he's saving one of my main projects. It was one that I actually got funded while I was at Virginia Tech, but didn't start it because of the pandemic, and then moved it here, and then totally needed to restructure the project and had to find new collaborators and new expertise. And so when I say he saved me, he saved me, he saved the project because he had the perfect expertise for that project. So it was great.
Oh, we'll have to get him in for an interview, maybe
Yeah.
teach us about all that. So, what actually brought you to the U of A then?
Well, I've been a very traditional faculty member for a long, long time. Like I said, 20 years, and doing the things that faculty do, teaching classes and running a research group, writing grants, getting projects funded, that sort of thing. At my two former institutions, first at Wake Forest and then Virginia Tech. And so 20 years is a long time doing that sort of thing. And even though I kind of fed my desire for variety by doing things like, a lot of patent prosecution, and we mentioned the startup companies, worked a lot with some great collaborators around the country and the world, in medical schools and in engineering departments and such. I I tend to get a little bored sometimes if I'm not tremendously challenged, I guess. And 20 years of doing that, I was looking for some new challenges. So I started investigating a little bit of, I knew I wanted to stay in academia. I was in industry early in my career for almost a decade, actually, and had been chief science officer of one of my startup companies. And so I'd kind of done a lot of those sorts of things, and I knew enough about myself to know that I wanted to stay in academia, but was looking for maybe something new and different to do in academia. So then I started looking around at things like department head jobs. And then I've got a whole story about how I ended up here as ADR, because I was not looking for an associate dean position necessarily, but here I am.
We're happy to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I think that's a classic 2020 story.
Yeah, it was a strange set of circumstances. And I got recruited and came here right during the middle of the pandemic. So that just added a whole bunch more strangeness to it.
Mm-hmm. Has your, just a question as a grad student, were any of those companies and patents and everything, was that while you were a grad student or was that afterwards?
No, it was all while I was a faculty member.
Okay, so I'll plan on doing that later.
You can do it as a grad student too. It's a little harder.
Really?
Yeah, but it's hard. It's not easy to end up on patents.
Do you have any general tips for incoming grad students to the, maybe not even biomedical engineering, but engineering in general?
General tips on what? Because I'm full of advice and guidance. You'll find
on
that.
Having fun and getting things done.
Having fun and getting things done. Well, to me, they're both the same thing, because I thought being a grad student was a lot of fun. I enjoyed grad school, but I went to grad school a little bit later in life. I started graduate school as a 28-year-old, husband and father of my first daughter. So again, kind of a non-traditional pathway. And at that time, I guess I was maybe more of a non-traditional graduate student too. But I had come out of 10 years in industry when I went to grad school. So I had a bunch of fun because I had a whole bunch more time on my hands. In industry, I was running around like crazy and super busy. And grad school was a break from that. And I got to spend a lot more time with my family, for sure. Played a lot more basketball than I had in years. I worked a lot in the lab, and I worked really hard and did a lot of things. And you have to do that as a graduate student. I was on a company fellowship, on an industry sponsored fellowship. So I had a certain period of time that I had to finish. So I had to be nose to the grindstone in a lot of ways and get done in a certain time frame, because my fellowship had a limit to it. But I did a lot of extracurricular things that I didn't have time for when I was in industry, and got to spend a lot more time with my family. So it was great. It was great to be in academia again, and take advantage of all the things that were being offered, seminars, and just getting to learn about stuff outside my field and things that other labs and other faculty were doing. And then I love research and I love science. And so, I got to delve into some projects that I probably wouldn't have ever touched in industry, because you don't get to do that kind of work a lot of times. So work was fun, and grad school was fun, and I enjoyed everything about that period of my life. I have a lot of fun now too, so it's not like that's the only fun I've ever had. But I guess I was one of those people that had a pretty decent work-life balance as a grad student. And I think that's what you have to have, kind of make sure that it's pretty balanced out.
Yeah, sure. That's work-life balance is for sure the name of the game.
Yeah, it can be hard. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on faculty too, but grad students too, and to be successful, move on to the next level. If you're headed for a postdoc, there's certain things that you have to do as a grad student to be competitive for that. I always tell my big piece of advice is start early. Think about those things and have a plan. Time is on your side when you've got a lot of it in front of you. And then if you're waiting until you graduate to decide what it is that you want to do next, that's okay. But it's better to plan ahead. Because if you want to do something, for example, like go to a really competitive lab for a postdoc, you don't typically just fall into that. You gotta make a plan to get yourself there.
Right, absolutely. You went straight to a postdoc after grad school?
I did not. So this is one of the cases where I say, do as I say, not as I do. But I had done 10 years in industry before I went to grad school. So I kind of felt like I did a pre-doc.
Yes.
Because I had a lot of research under my belt. And, I had a young family. My oldest daughter at that time was 6 years old, and we had a second child on the way. And so I was ready for the job market for a lot of reasons. So I went from grad school to a place called Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio, Texas, which was an awesome place to work.
Right, Texas, the humid hot.
Yeah, the humid hot, for sure. Yep.
And then you, that was after that when you became a PI back in academia?
Yeah, so I was at Southwest for 6 years. And then I joined Wake Forest School of Medicine and was one of the founding faculty of the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine. So when I was at Southwest, I sort of dabbled in tissue engineering and wound healing and some, applications of biomaterials, especially keratin biomaterials, to things like battlefield trauma. But I really did a lot more of that at Wake Forest, and being part of a brand new institute around a really fast growing field like regenerative medicine. That sort of took tissue engineering into a much broader context and got me engaged in a whole bunch of different things, especially because I was in a medical school. The institute was attached to a medical school. So being in that medical environment was very different, because I'd been in a traditional engineering environment before that. So that was also a great experience.
Regenerative medicine, that's such a big field. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
The biomaterials, is it always regenerative medicine, or it can be biomaterials is the broadest, and then regenerative medicine is part of biomaterials, right?
Yeah. Okay. Biomaterials spans lots of different applications. And depending on who you ask, my area of biomaterials was more in the area of things like healthcare and medical applications, but there's also all sorts of materials from biology that are out
Right.
there. So yeah, it just depends on who you talk to and what definition they use for biomaterials.
Yeah, that was when trying to explain to people about the fields in biomedical engineering, you have to go down a layer to a layer to a layer,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
many, it's such an interdisciplinary field, I would say.
yeah, yeah. And you could be, even within medical biomaterials, you can be more of a metallurgist or a ceramist or a polymer person, or I guess I've become more of a natural biomolecules person. And that's very different than synthetic polymer chemistry, for example, which is where I
Natural,
started.
natural biomolecules, biomimetics.
It can be biomimetics, and that relates to some of the projects that we're doing now, but not necessarily. So biomimetics, bio-inspired materials, that's a whole other area of biomolecular materials that can get into biomaterials and medical applications, but it can be non-medical as well. One of the projects that we have is non-medical, but it's bio-inspired. So yeah, it sort of goes all over the place, or it can.
It's there's a lot of words to learn.
Yeah, well, it's basically, I guess the way I got into it is I started off as a chemist. You know,
Mhm.
my undergraduate degree is in chemistry, and I did a lot of physics and biology was there as well, because in my undergrad I was thinking about med school and that sort of stuff. So it was like a combination of physics, math, chemistry, biology, and then it ended up being materials engineering, and now largely protein-based biopolymeric materials, I guess.
We'll need a whole other interview where you can explain all of that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I guess final question would be a general excitement for where this field is going, and then due to your position, maybe where the College of Engineering is headed.
Wow. Yeah, big question, because the College of Engineering is going like crazy.
It's booming.
Yeah. So I've been here, I guess, about 14 months now, and we're really active at the college level with the growth plan for the College of Engineering. I don't know how much of this information is known to students, but certainly among the faculty and the leadership of the college, it's very well known that we've got very ambitious growth plans to add about 3,000 undergrad students to the enrollment, several hundred new graduate students, 50 to 60 new faculty. And as Associate Dean for Research, of course, that means growing the research enterprise to be able to support all those graduate students and to give opportunities for undergrads. So there's all sorts of stuff going on in my role. It's not just about, sort of the traditional kinds of let's go out and get a grant to do this project, but even all sources of funding coming into the college to support whatever it is that we want to do, whether it's strictly research or even education and training programs. So we're looking at a lot of different funding opportunities for the buzzword is workforce development for training students, undergrad and grad level. And so with all of that, with those ambitious growth plans, you can imagine there's just a ton of activity. And we have to have places for people and for students. So there's, facilities aspects to that. And it's a really interesting time right now, not just because, and that's part of what drew me here to the university, is that it's really kind of a once in a career opportunity to go through a growth phase like that. I had some experience with that when we built the Institute for Regenerative Medicine, because that place grew like crazy too. But, really, this is sort of a really unique time for a lot of our faculty. Students may not see it as much because their time here is more limited, but what will happen in the College of Engineering at the U of A over the next 5 years will set the course for the next 20 to 30 years in this college. And so it's some pretty amazing stuff.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see
Well, anything
everything.
else you want to ask me?
That's everything except for all of the protein information and all of that confusing stuff.
Yeah, we can do that another time, or you can have Dr. Kim explain it to you.
There we go. Yeah, maybe we'll have to have a little panel.